Here we go. The diaspora question, the DQ, and not the Dairy Queen for those that live in the South. The diaspora question. I think it's a good one to ask because the U.S. is, of course, considered a melting pot. That's the whole idea of the U.S., right? Give me your poor, huddled masses, and like I say, I'm not going to go off on a tangent about who that writer was, but you can look into it. So let's go ahead and dig into this a little bit. The U.S. has always had a problem with specific groups of people and targeting them. All right, so we can talk about black folks and everything else, and the targeting and the keeping folks in hoods and all that sort of thing, and the treatment of them in hospitals. Okay, that is an aspect, but in general, in my opinion, with melanated people, if we want to put it that way, they're pretty much products of the American system. They don't have any connection to African nations for the most part. Like I said, there are Nigerian immigrants and whatnot, but in general, they are products of the American system, just the same as some honkies are. So, but they're, that's the real question, isn't it? Between, okay, what length of time is it that you are considered a diaspora versus you are actually part of the American system and you're a product of it, as I like to call myself? I would say at least second or third generation, I would say. There are some folks, I mean, it's amazing to me, of course, that they'll say, oh yeah, well, I'm still German, even though I married a Hispanic woman, I'm still German, Deutschland über alles and all that, it's like, come on, man. No, you're not German. Or you get these, you'll get these, Greek folks or whatever, or Czechs or whichever that'll act like, to me, that's not diaspora. No. Those are LARPers who think that they are part of some imagined system. It's like, yeah, I'm part Welsh, but it's like, I don't have anything to do with Wales. I sure as hell don't speak Welsh. That's a hard ass language, man. But anyway, that is not diaspora. Now, Chinese, depending, it's like San Francisco. My assumption is a lot of those folks still speak Cantonese. And there's a different, the Cantonese Mandarin difference is pretty huge. I mean, obviously Cantonese coming from Guangdong province is, and of course the English couldn't speak, Mandarin and whatnot. So they didn't understand what Guangdong meant. And so they just said, they say Guangdong or, and that just became Canton. So that's the whole thing. It became Canton. And that's the whole thing that it's the same way they call Canton. It's actually Guangzhou. But yeah, that's primarily where it was because they're part of the Hakka people of China. Like I said, I'm already drowning, so I'll cut to the chase. The real question is that there was a cultural connection. In the early 20th century, there was a huge German diaspora, and a lot of this country arguably was German. Became very close to being the official language of the United States, but there was a huge German diaspora. World War I, World War II changed that. World War I, there was a huge anti-German backlash. It's like sauerkraut. Is actually, just cabbage. We're going to call it that. Same thing kind of with freedom fries. That's a whole other thing. There's a huge amount of anti-German attitude that existed. And because of that, some people left. You see this also with the Second World War, of course. I mean, we see the German-American Bund, and you see, I can't think of his name now. Kuntz? I can't think. Anyway, but the guy who called himself the American Führer, and everyone was mad as hell about it, and Jews attacked their rally that they had in New York City. Ultimately, like I say, most of those folks were LARPers, this and that, and and didn't go anywhere. They took pictures with Hitler, this and that, but ultimately Hitler didn't really take them seriously. So yeah. What I would say though is this is, diaspora is very strong. And I think that when you have the sort of the white supremacy, and I think that, like I said, I think the TRS folks, I'll give the TRS folks this, is that they call World War II what it was, that it was white supremacy versus white nationalism, or, white supremacy versus National Socialism. It was really that sort of thing. The Ku Klux Klan, of course, being hugely reactionary, very much a Baptist or sort of a, Protestant sort of reaction to Catholicism and black folks and Catholics and everything else, right? And what that's created is a loyalty to your home country. Like I say, a lot of German Americans had to blend in. They were forced to assimilate to the system, much the same way as the Irish did, and they chose to become police and all that. Same thing with the Italians to a different degree. A lot of Italians, of course, getting into business, but also, becoming part of the government, such as Fiorello LaGuardia, the mayor of New York. The U.S. has these diasporas who blend in. And a lot of the European country folk, a lot of the folks from European countries, whether that's Western Europe, Southern Europe, or Eastern Europe in general, they assimilated largely into that culture, whether that be in the U.S., whether that be in Canada and Australia, et cetera, right? They blended in. They became part of that system. They assimilated. The real question is, has that happened with Asia? And of course, I know Asia is a large area, and of course, Asia is a large term to say, but to speak on, for example, China, with the huge rise in attacks on Chinese, of course, mostly by brothers, basically, by melanated people. It's interesting, of course, that a lot of those, there are some honkies that do it too. Don't get me wrong. Like I say, let's try to be fair here. But, there's a lot of hostility there. And so a lot of Chinese folks, obviously, we think of the East Coast, we think of San Francisco, of course, being one of the larger Chinatowns, maybe, New York's Chinatown or wherever else, or even Koreatown. Like I say, I know those terms are outdated and a lot of people say that's racist, but I'm trying to speak it as honest as I can. A lot of folks identify with their home country. And this is the whole thing of, they'll say, well, white supremacy is bad, this and that, but we love China. This is something that a lot of folks are trying to question nowadays. They say, well, I see all these Asian folks, these Chinese folks, or whatever, they're involved with BLM, and they're involved with, once these attacks started to occur in San Francisco and California, all across the U.S., it was just like, it's not their fault, though. It's white supremacy's fault. And, they become very anti-white and everything. Like I say, I'm steering a little bit more towards, I'm about to steer into the grass here. So let me get back on the road. The thing is that diasporas have a it's all depending on how strong their loyalty is to their home country. Like I say, Germans, like I say, most Europeans, whether it's Western, Eastern, Southern, whichever you want to say, for the most part, they have assimilated largely into American culture. And of course, they'll just say, this is the whole idea of, are Italians white? And all, like I say. And of course, we always make the joke that Italians are black folks, or Southern Italians are black, and like Northern Italians are Aryan, but that's a, funny haha. But the real question is, would Chinese diaspora, and I point to Chinese diaspora, you can point to Filipino diaspora, you could point to Vietnamese diaspora, of course, after the Vietnam War. You have the Hmong people living in, places like, St. Paul, Minnesota, right? There, like I say, the world is not black and white. Things are not a monolith. But we point to China because obviously China is a rising power. And a lot of folks are saying, obviously we see people like, Captain Cool 07, of course, who makes his videos about how, he shows a loyalty to China. The real question is how would they be seen by the mainland Chinese person? Like I say, the average, American-born, of European stock going to one of their countries, you're not going to be seen as one. Then they're just going to be like, get the hell out of here. This is why, we laughed at people. That's why we laugh at people like, what's his name? What's his face? I can't think of his name. Yeah, I don't care. But anyway, Dark Synovia, that's it. Dark Synovia. Because it's so goofy to be like, yeah, I'm Irish and I'm going to, no, man, you're an American. You're a product of the American system. Stop fooling yourself. Chinese, it's a different thing, right? They're much more open. It's not as racially pure, this and that. It's just like, yeah, you're one of us. Now, of course, it's I'm sure that there would be tensions, but what sort of tension would it be? I don't know, but it's a real question of diaspora and how much loyalty do they feel? Like I say, most European, immigration into the U.S. ended, hundreds of years ago. Like I said, there are still people that come from Italy and Germany. I get that. But for the most part, the Anglos and everything else, like I say, they've had their time to settle in. They've been here for generations, right? Chinese, like I say, you could say, at least a generation or two they've been to this country. But it's a very different thing. And they still feel a loyalty to this country. They still feel a loyalty to their home country, and so I think it's the diaspora question of who do we show our loyalty to once this whole thing collapses, who do you really feel loyalty to? It's going to be a real question to think about. Like I said, I know people are going to say, oh, xenophobic. No. I'm speaking about it in pragmatic terms. I'm not advocating for anyone to hurt minorities or Asians. No. Please don't do that. Don't do it. I'll try to speak to your self-interest. You want to end up in jail for the rest of your life over some dumb crap because you decided that you didn't like the way somebody looked at you? Nah, man, don't end up that way. So, but anyway, the question of diaspora is, at least from an Americentric point of view, is something that needs, to me, has not really been questioned as much. And I think that this is going to be one of many questions that will be asked later on in the in kind of the dissolution of the United States, kind of the the slow breakup of the U.S., which I do feel is coming. But anyway. That was a lot more rambly than what I thought. So, as always, I do appreciate your comments. Please tell me. Like I said, it's been a while since I've said it, but please tell me. You could work on the premise a little bit, or work on this a little bit. And I like constructive criticism. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. This goes on for about 15 minutes, so not too bad. But hopefully y'all enjoyed that. See you later, and goodbye.